Marvel Rivals Season 4 just dropped, with the introduction of a new hero, Angela, and with the possibilities of a new meta on the horizon. And you find yourself stuck in the same place of what character do I pick or what I do to counter these heroes. And luckily enough for you, today I have the ultimate counter class or the ultimate counter guide that you need to know for Marvel Rivals Season 4. Whether it's direct hero counters like picking Punisher into Iron Man, or you just need raw strategy like playing triple Strategist into a Black Panther or any dive composition, I have the cheat code that will save your day. And if you're new here or find yourself coming back on a regular and you aren't already subscribed yet, why not? It's completely free and you're coming back anyways. We're going for the goal of 50,000 subscribers, so might as well join the pond and help me out. But that's enough about that. Without further ado, let's dive straight into our first section of Vanguards. We begin with the Sorcerer Supreme himself, Doctor Strange. Now in Season 4, Doctor Strange received some rather interesting buffs. They first reduced his Maelstrom of Madness cooldown from 8 to 6 seconds, which honestly should mean you're never getting anti-healed by your passive anymore. But he also received somewhat of nerf because they reduced his base health from 600 to 575. Although that change isn't really important because he still has his team up anchor bonus, so he still sits around 675 HP. Now the Maelstrom of Madness cooldown change definitely makes Doctor Strange a much more viable tank than he was in previous seasons. So how exactly do we go around countering a character like Doctor Strange? Well, you counter heroes in Marvel Rivals in two different ways in my opinion. The first way is having direct hero counters. For example, picking Wolverine into a Vanguard. The second way to counter is by using some sort of strategy or theory if that direct counter is banned, or it might not be optimal playing it with your own comp. That's enough about that. Let's talk about the direct counters to Doctor Strange in my opinion. Now, some of the first counters we want to be looking at is characters in the Vanguard section that can go toe-to-toe with Doctor Strange. Now, one of the first counters to Doctor Strange is Emma Frost. It's no surprise that she is insane. That being said, she can no longer really charge her beam on Doctor Strange's shield, which is definitely a plus for Strange. However, you still have to worry about the Diamond Form. In Diamond Form, Emma can easily do basic melee attacks through your shield, can easily grab and kick you and displace you around. She can grab you right when you're about to ult, putting you back to 50% ult charge, so she is definitely very annoying to play into. Even with the recent changes to Doctor Strange where he can fly a lot more often now, and the changes to Emma Frost where she doesn't have Diamond Form all the time anymore, she is still a big obstacle for Doctor Strange to get around. Now, another great Vanguard counter in my opinion is Hulk. Again, Doctor Strange, when he's blocking with his shield, can't block melee attacks, and while Hulk is primarily punching you, so you can easily punch through his shield. That being said, that's not the most optimal way to play Hulk, but he is a counter. If Doctor Strange is going for an ult, you can easily exile the Strange and not have to worry about the ult as well. Another thing, if Doctor Strange is flying around with his Cloak of Levitation ability, his shift or movement ability, whatever you want to describe it as, Hulk can jump into the air, press your primary attack, knock him down to the ground, and the rest of your team focuses him. Now, continuing on our direct counters for our Vanguards, I'll throw one last in, and that's Thor. Although Thor isn't amazing or the best hero in the game, Thor is a great counter to Doctor Strange because he has high burst damage mobility and ability to disrupt enemy formations. You have to keep in mind, for the most part, Doctor Strange thrives when he can stay safe at a distance and use his shields to protect himself and his team, especially with the changes again to the Maelstrom of Madness ability, his E ability easily gets rid of his passive abilities, so he doesn't have that dark energy built up. And they also changed it a few seasons ago where he doesn't have damage fall off from that ability as well, so playing at a distance with this character can be relatively good. Now, one more Vanguard throwing into the mix is the new Vanguard, Angela. She kind of operates like Thor, of throwing enemies around, displacing them, making their lives a living nightmare. So Angela can definitely be thrown onto the list. You fly in, you push the Doctor Strange into your own team, but just make sure that the Doctor Strange doesn't have ult. Now let's talk about some of our Duelist counters. The first Duelist counter, in my opinion, has to be Punisher, and I mainly pick Punisher for shield break. You're trying to break his shield as fast as possible. Punisher is one of those characters that can just dump a ton of damage to that shield and quickly destroy it, whether it's with his shotgun, his primary AR, or even his turret. All of those do extremely well at countering Doctor Strange's shield and just bursting him down. Following that, if Doctor Strange is going for an ult, Punisher can either use his turret form immediately when the ult's gonna go to protect himself because it's CC immune, or he can pop his ultimate, which also makes him crowd control immune or CC immune as well, and you just shred the Doctor Strange down. So a very good option if you're looking for a duelist and you have no way to work around a Doctor Strange. Another character to keep in mind is a character like Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl kind of does the same exact thing as Punisher. Ton of burst damage to quickly get rid of that pesky and annoying 800 HP shield. So again, that shield is one of the main reasons Doctor Strange is alive all the time. The quicker you get rid of it, the quicker it's going to be easier to eliminate him. Now, another duelist you can keep in mind is going to be Winter Soldier. Now, Winter Soldier might not seem like the best pick. Well, he does do some damage to the shield. He does the explosive damage. Not a ton of damage, so I wouldn't recommend really just dumping your shots in the shield, although you can to destroy it. You're pretty much using the hook to hook Doctor Strange out of position. That can be said for a lot of Vanguards as Bucky. But you're also able to use it to counter his ultimate. If the Doctor Strange is going for his ultimate, you can save your hook for it. So the second he goes for the ult, you just hook him and the ult is 50 or the ult is cancelled. Following that, Winter Soldier got a new effect to his shift ability. That's where he goes forward and knocks up an enemy. You now get grounded or whatever the term is. But again, very good at getting rid of Doctor Strange. So if you hook him, then uppercut him into your team, he's pretty much guaranteed a death. In terms of strategists, you're not really picking strategists to counter Doctor Strange. You're picking them for their crowd control abilities, essentially. For instance, Luna Snow doesn't essentially counter Doctor Strange. What counters Doctor Strange is Luna Snow's Snowball and her ultimate. Because if the Doctor Strange goes for an ultimate, typically you will pop your own strategist ultimate. That is certainly true. That goes for any strategist in the game pretty much. The reason why you pick Luna Snow in some circumstances is because of the freeze. If Doctor Strange goes for an ultimate, you can land a Hail Mary Snowball and cancel the ultimate. Now that same exact thing can be said for Mantis with her sleep ability. The only thing you have to keep in mind though is that if you pop your ultimate as Mantis and you get ulted by Doctor Strange, you're not crowd control immune, meaning you can easily get bursted down the second you get Doctor Strange ulted. So Mantis might not be the best pick, but can be picked to counter Doctor Strange. Probably the best, I guess, counter pick, if you really want to describe it that way, is honestly Invisible Woman. Invisible Woman has the push ability or the pull ability, either or. Doctor Strange is going for an ultimate, you push him away. It doesn't cancel his ultimate, so he doesn't get 50'd, but he wastes his ultimate because it hits nobody. So a really good counter to a very pesky Doctor Strange if you're playing, a strategist. Definitely Invisible Woman because of the push. Although it does take a little bit of time to understand when and where to use it. For the most part, if you're playing a Doctor Strange, it's a good idea to save your E ability or whatever it is on controller for the Doctor Strange ultimate all the time. You just have to be extremely careful when you use your ultimate as Invisible Woman if the Doctor Strange goes for an ultimate instead of your own. Another good counter as a strategist is Cloak and Dagger. In Cloak's form, you can use the right click or the dismiss, whatever it is, and make your whole team immune for a little bit. So it's a very good idea to use it. You just have to tell your team not to use any abilities or to shoot their primary or secondary, and you pretty much save your entire team from a Doctor Strange ultimate. All are good options. All are good options. I don't know why I said it like that. All are good options, so definitely stuff to keep in mind. That was a very long explanation of the 3 different roles, but you wanted this video. I'm sorry. Now we come to the strategy section. Yes, we finally made it. Basically, going against Doctor Strange, what you're looking for. You want to break his shield as quickly as possible. Note down when he uses his Cloak of Levitation. Again, it's on about a 12-second cooldown, so something to take a mental note of. The second you break his shield, or the second he uses the Cloak of Levitation, he's in a very vulnerable space. This is when he uses any form of displacement, like pushes or pulls or hooks, knocks up, stuns, any form of crowd control. This is the option you use it because he doesn't have any escape methods. Another strategy you could kind of throw into the mix is if they're playing Doctor Strange and he's being a complete nuisance, is just playing a dive comp, pushing past the Doctor Strange, making them feel useless, and you just get all of the work done in their backline. Doctor Strange can't really do much. But that's essentially how you counter Doctor Strange in Marvel Rivals Season 4. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. But anyways, on to our next Vanguard. Yes, it's going to be a little bit shorter. Because the Doctor Strange section was way too long, we're going to condense it a little bit more. So for Hulk, you want to focus on high crowd control, burst damage, and mobility. You want to think about heroes with displacements, stuns, or roots like Hela, Luna Snow, or even Peni Parker are super effective at disrupting Hulk's relentless charges. Simultaneously, you want to think about heroes that do damage even from a distance as well. You want to think about Punisher, characters like Starlord, even Squirrel Girl as well can also kite him and do a ton of burst damage. Winter Soldier is also a very good example of how to counter a character like Hulk, especially with the changes in Season 4. The character is absolutely insane now. But in terms of mobility and positioning or raw strategy, you want to think about kiting. High mobility heroes like Starlord can consistently deal damage while staying outside of Hulk's attack range and making it difficult for him to really engage. Another thing to keep in mind is that Hulk is a diving tank or a diving Vanguard, meaning you're going to have one of your Vanguards and some of your DPS peel for your backline when the Hulk dives in. So peeling is a big crucial theory and big crucial point of countering Hulk. The second Hulk dives in, immediately turn all of your resources, focus the Hulk down, get rid of the pest as fast as possible. So again, like I said, you want to disengage and pressure. The core strategy is to apply consistent pressure or constant pressure, punishing his engagements by forcing him into Bruce Banner form and burning his cooldowns as quickly as possible. That's how you get rid of Hulk being an absolute menace in your backline. Moving on, we come to Magneto himself. So for our direct hero counters, you could throw Doctor Strange into the mix if you want to. He can pressure Magneto pretty heavily. You also have a character like Emma Frost with the diamond form, like I previously talked about with Doctor Strange. Shield heroes usually fall under the same categories, or the same Vanguards typically are going to be countering those same shield heroes. So again, Hulk, characters that punch through shields, definitely good pickups. Characters like Wolverine, who can go in and grab Magneto, bring him into his own team, and just shred the character down, is a very good counter. Yes, Magneto can bubble himself, and you can miss the pickup. Yes, we all know that, but you just have to wait for the cooldown to go away, then you grab him. Now, the same could be said for Winter Soldier going for a bionic hook onto the Magneto. All you have to do is start up your Winter Soldier hook, have the Magneto use his left shift, and I'm pretty sure the timing is that his shield goes away by the time the last second you can throw out the hook. So definitely recommend trying to do that. So when we think of strategy and tactical approaches, you always want to use shields for his ultimate, or things like runes from Loki, Soul Bond from Adam Warlock, and you want to wait for Magneto to use his Meteor M or his Giant Meatball and counter it with a shield ability or any other ability. Like I said, Regeneration Domain from Loki or even Soul Bond from Adam Warlock, all great ways of countering it. Now, when we talk about range, Magneto has a significant advantage in the mid-range, especially with the one-shot combo where it's the left-right click animation cancel followed up by another left click. So you definitely want to position yourself so you're not in direct line of sight, especially if you're playing a strategist. You're not in direct line of sight of Magneto, because you can very much well get one-shotted by this character. Even though you can get one-shotted by DPS, this character is insane. Then of course you want to target off angles. You don't engage Magneto for the most part head-on unless you're a Vanguard. You want to use cover and attack from sides or behind to avoid his strong burst attacks. Like I said, the one-shot combo, very annoying to deal with, so taking off angles is a great way to kind of deal with him. Another thing, you really want to utilize burst damage. Magneto is a tank with decently high survivability. He essentially has two shields if you think about it. With high survivability, you want to focus on dealing a high burst of damage to break through his shield, quickly get rid of it, even though it has essentially infinite HP, but you get the gist. And you want to quickly get rid of his other shield that he usually puts on himself or his teammate, burst those down as quickly as possible, then you don't have to deal with it anymore. To counter Thor and Marvel Rivals, you want to focus on crowd control, CC for short, abilities to lock him down such as stuns, slows, or freezes, and use anti-dive heroes like Winter Soldier. You could throw Namor into the mix with the Gamma team-up, of course. Punisher as well are all decently good counters. A character like Groot can seem somewhat of not the best pick, but in my opinion can be a pretty good pick. Say for instance, the Thor dashes in. The Groot walls him. The Thor turns around to dash, the wall is there. Or the Thor sees the wall and has to dash up, so he takes an extra second of thinking where to dash to. So that little split second, even though it doesn't seem like the best counter, can still be seen as a counter in my opinion. Another good counter is a character like Emma Frost, because the character is literally just insane, is amazing at doing pretty much everything. I think for the most part, a lot of people, if Emma's in the game, there's no chance in hell that they're playing Thor, because that character should not be getting any sort of value with Emma in the game. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Peni Parker, definitely a character you can consider as well. Just the perma CC or the perma right click, the perma web, definitely annoying to deal with if you're playing as Thor. To counter Groot Marvel Rivals, you need to be a beaver or a lumberjack. You need to break his walls to remove his high potential burst damage and his high tankiness, and avoid tight spaces where he can control the fight his way. In terms of direct hero counters, you want to think about characters like Wolverine. Look, Wolverine has been the counter to Groot since the dawn of this game's creation, who aggressively attacks him. Winter Soldier and Punisher, who excel at destroying his walls, are extremely good. Alternative heroes like Hulk, Doctor Strange, Captain America can bypass his walls entirely with movement abilities. You can also throw a lot of the flyers into the mix as well, because all they do is simply fly over the walls, maintain the height, quickly destroy them, and pressure him for the air where he might not be the best at dealing with flyers. Definitely a good option. You also want to flank and attack from different angles. Since he's rather slow for a Vanguard and lacks mobility, he's vulnerable to attacks from multiple directions or different characters from different angles. Although you could say he can wall himself up to different spots, he can full box himself wherever you want to say. Generally speaking, going from different angles, pressuring him is a very good strategy. To counter Peni Parker in Marvel Rivals, especially with the recent buffs in Season 4, feels like a lot, especially if you're playing against a very good Peni Parker with the Rocket Raccoon team-up. But here's what you do. You want to focus on destroying her spider nest generator to remove her healing and movement boost, and target her directly before she can set up another generator. Getting rid of those generators is a must priority if you want to shut down a character like Peni Parker. The generators is what enables the character to do pretty much everything, do damage, to stay alive so long, to be a complete nuisance, so always prioritize destroying that. Now, direct hero counters, in my opinion, are characters like Groot. Groot can use his wall to destroy his generator or her generator in a split second. You just wall it and it's gone. Whereas if you have another character who's just sitting there shooting it, it might take a little while, and the enemy team and Peni can capitalize on that. So maybe getting a Groot and just using it to destroy the generators, although not the best strategy in my opinion, it is a plausible strategy or a good strategy that actually works. I think characters like Starlord, who can chase and avoid her traps with the right click to get a split second iframe, are strong counter picks. Also, aerial characters and high damage heroes who can displace her or quickly take her down once the generators are gone are very high priority characters. Characters like Human Torch, Iron Man, even Storm, if you want to throw in that mix, Squirrel Girl and Moon Knight are also very good at counters. Another useful tip if you're playing against a Peni Parker is to kind of think like a Peni Parker. You want to think about positioning. Where are the likely chances she's going to be putting her mines? Where are the likely chances she's going to be putting her generators to where it's getting value, but it's just far away enough that your team cannot see the generator? That's how you go against a Peni. You think of high traffic points on maps, you probably should avoid those high traffic points because there's more than likely going to be mines there that you can't destroy under the web. So avoiding those high traffic areas, whether it's corridors or different types of routes, avoiding those, even though it's not completely countering the character, it's definitely making her less impactful. To counter Captain America and Marvel Rivals, you want to prioritize crowd control, sustained range damage, and disruption to limit his effectiveness. So the first thing to think about when dealing with an annoying Captain America is crowd control. CC abilities are short, making heroes like Mantis, The Thing, Luna Snow are all very good characters that can easily disrupt him with the AoE effects, or a Peni Parker with the right click, or a Thing, like I previously mentioned, this being a complete nuisance. So one of the best ways of dealing with Captain America in terms of strategy and just general play is marking him, or just keeping a track of where he is, where he's pathing, where he's running around the map, what health packs are currently up, on cooldown. Things like that are the small things you need to be looking for. The second that Captain America dives into your enemy team, you'll want to immediately dump all of your resources into him, quickly get rid of that target as fast as possible. The whole point of a Captain America is to go into your team's backline, distract the enemy healers or your team's healers, so they focus on healing each other, while the rest of the enemy team collapses on that because your healers are looking at each other, not the rest of the team. So that's how they win. So in turn, basically the faster you can get rid of the nuisance in your backline, the easier it is for your team to stabilize and continue pushing on. In my opinion, characters like Punisher with the shotgun when a Captain America dives in is a very solid counter. Quickly gets rid of the target whether you want to believe it or not. Namor is a excellent counter, especially with the Hulk team up, getting rid of him, and pretty much any character that can kind of stick onto him. I would say Iron Fist is a great counter. He can be pretty decent, but he's just not in the best spot right now. It feels a little bit stronger. He would definitely be a lot better at dealing with them, but in terms of tracking him and marking him, you could say Iron Fist to kind of stick with them or keep on him. Definitely a possibility. Like I said, you definitely want to isolate and pressure him. So if he's diving into your team's backline, you want to focus your team's efforts on isolating the Captain America to prevent them from controlling a fight. So that is something big you want to keep in mind all the time. You see it time and time again from high elo play and pro play. The second he's diving the backline, usually the team is instantly responding on him. So moving on to counter Venom and Marvel Rivals, you want to really focus on crowd control to lock him down, especially during his symbiote resistance, which is his bonus health or the overshield, and pair it with high burst damage to burn him quickly before he can escape with his swing ability. So again, you want to exploit his weaknesses. Crowd control, CC for short, if you don't know. Venom is highly vulnerable to crowd control abilities like stuns, roots, and knockups. You want to use these to interrupt his movement and prevent him from using his escape options. A very good example of a character that counters him currently is Winter Soldier. Again, I've been saying this, especially with the changes they made in Season 4. This character is amazing at dealing with a character like Venom, a Hulk, a Thor, any of these diving Vanguards, an excellent choice. Now, another way to counter Venom is tracking his cooldowns. So both his swing ability and his bonus health, his E ability, which is the symbiote resistance, very crucial you track those abilities. He is only going to be diving into your team if he has both of those abilities up. The second he uses one of those abilities, he's going to be a lot easier to kill because he's either not going to have the ability to swing out, or he's not going to have the ability to grant himself a bonus HP. So keeping track of what abilities he uses during certain fights definitely is one of the best ways at countering him. Then of course you have direct hero counters like Hela, because Hela is just insanely good at this game. Phoenix, also a decent counter. Kind of crazy that the snipers, the long range healers, are very good at dealing with diving Vanguards. Starlord, in my opinion, also a really good pick. Punisher, again, Winter Soldier, all decent picks. Wolverine, extremely strong as well. And essentially, just like Captain America, just like Hulk, you want to stay mobile since Venom is rather close quarters in my opinion. You want to attacking from a distance and separating him from his supports can be super effective. You want to team up, you want to coordinate with your team to focus fire and land crowd control abilities in combination with high damage to eliminate Venom quickly and efficiently. Now, one less counter tip is to anticipate his dives. This comes with a lot more playtime on the game, and that's you want to pay attention to Venom's movements to predict when he will use his swing ability and be ready to react with crowd control or damage. For example, if a Venom dives in and you use a ton of burst damage, he's more than likely going to get ready to swing out because he no longer has his E ability, his symbiote resistance. Typically, the Venom will dive in, gets pretty low, uses symbiote resistance, stays a little bit longer, then swings out. Typically, the second he uses the symbiote resistance, you want to wait just a little bit, start chunking it down, then dump all of your crowd control effects onto him, because that's when he's aiming to leave. So understanding that, learning that, how to adjust for it, is definitely a high elo but crucial mindset to keep in mind, if that makes sense. So when it comes to countering our big lovable boulder, aka the Thing, you should keep your distance to avoid his close range attacks. You want to use long range characters like Hawkeye, honestly pretty decent in my opinion, Punisher, Hela, Phoenix, to really shred him down. You want to utilize stuns, freezes, or sleeps to briefly interrupt his relentless movement and damage, such as with Mantis, Luna Snow, all decent at dealing with him. Alternatively, flying characters can be good, although he did receive a new change back in Season 3.5 or Season 3, that you can, for whatever reason, fly up to an enemy flyer and knock them down with the right click. Although most things don't do that a ton, it is something to keep in mind, but flyers can be a decent counter. You have to think Thing is pretty much all close quarters. The thing excels in close quarters combat, so you want to stay at a distance to deplete his resources. Pretty self-explanatory. For direct hero counters, you want to use characters like Mantis, Luna Snow, Peni Parker to continuously use some form of crowd control effects to completely shut down the character from moving. Yes, he's immune to crowd control effects, like a hook or whatever, but it still acts as a stun. You can still sleep him, you can still freeze him, unless he's using the Yancey Street charge, which is the shift ability. Then you can't use, crowd control effects, but in the neutral, you can, and it's perfectly fine. Then some characters to consider if you're having a hard time with them is Hawkeye, because you can do a lot of damage from a distance. Although Hawkeye might not be the best pick overall, he is a pick you can use. Punisher deals relentless damage and is very good at destroying that character. Winter Soldier, decent as well in my opinion. Now, Groot, I think, is a very good Vanguard counter because he creates walls to control his movement and blocks routes and healing line of sight. So Groot, definitely a good pick in my opinion. Now we move on to Emma Frost, and in my opinion, probably the strongest Vanguard in the entire game. Super annoying to deal with. Basically, you really just have to bait out her diamond form. Once she's out of her diamond form or she uses it, you have a window to wait until she goes back to her normal form. Then you can use things like Bionic Hook for Winter Soldier. You can use a grab from Wolf. You can use other forms of CC to deal with her. She is so hard to deal with. The character is so good that for the most part, if you're playing ranked, like generally speaking, and this is all honesty, if you're playing ranked and you hate the character, you don't know what character to pick, literally at the beginning of the game, if you have the option, just ban Emma Frost. That is probably the easiest way to counter. You're like, oh, you're copying out. No, I'm serious. The character is insane, so you should probably ban her. But if she somehow slips through, you really want to destroy her shield as fast as possible. You want to maintain distance at least further than 18 meters. Her beam reaches 18 meters. So if you can sit in about 20 meters with characters, I guess like Phoenix, Hela's not the best right now. Punisher is a decent counter because if Emma Frost is ulting, Punisher can pop his ultimate and he can't get grabbed and shreds down the Emma because the Emma doesn't do really that much damage during her ultimate. It's mainly for the crowd control effect, the status effect. So using Punisher with his ultimate is a good way to deal with her. That, in my opinion, is really the only way going around countering this character because she's just so good. Moving on, we come to the newest addition to the Vanguard roster, and that's none other than Angela. Angela is the newest flying hero in Marvel Rivals. She is certainly fun to play, but she's a little bit on the weaker side, so she's a lot easier to counter than you may think. Now, because she is a flying character, even though she is, I think, probably the fastest flying character in the entire game, she has a rather large hitbox, so hit scan heroes is one of the best ways to counter Angela, as she will constantly be flying since her movement speed, it's alright, her hitbox is massive. Applying consistent hits should not be difficult. Characters like Punisher, Hela, Phoenix, you can throw Winter Soldier, although it's a little bit of a projectile. Winter Soldier can still be super effective. All very good. My opinion, Luna Snow, Mantis, and Invisible Woman are some of the best strategies to counter Angela. Thanks to her abilities to freeze, sleep, all pretty good. The second Angela smacks into the ground, you can sleep her or freeze her. Invisible Woman's shift knocks her down. Invisible Woman's push and pull, this pushes Angela around in the air, making her impact very minuscule. And for the most part, the character isn't, again, the best character in the game. There's definitely better picks out there. But if you do run into that random Angela, I definitely encourage you to try hit scan heroes, try Invisible Woman. Those are probably some of the best ways of dealing with her. Honestly, Adam Warlock, very good as well to deal with. You have the soul bond of Angela drops down. You have the hit scan nature of Adam Warlock's kit, so a very good solid pick overall. But in my opinion, that's essentially how you counter all of the Vanguards in Marvel Rivals Season 4. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Now you might be thinking, I just sat here for maybe 30 minutes watching how to counter every single Vanguard in Marvel Rivals. Yes, you did. Now you might be wondering, why is this section so long in comparison to other previous counter videos you made? Now I made it longer because there's some details. For example, the Doctor Strange section was extremely long than what I typically do. But I think sometimes people don't understand the reasoning of why certain heroes counter other heroes or why certain strategies work. If you can explain them more in detail, maybe people will start understanding why it's effective. Or they will just skip to the end of the video, only listen to the beginning parts, and then close the video, comment that the video was terrible because you didn't mention your counter, even though they didn't fully watch the video. That's how you can tell. Sorry for the little rant, I just wanted to state that. But anyways, onto the Duelist section. While you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe. I made this video fresh from scratch because the other one got a little bit messed up, so definitely try to subscribe, try to like the video, greatly helps out the channel. Kicking things off with Black Panther. So when it comes to countering Black Panther and Marvel rivals, you want to use crowd control abilities like stuns, freezes, roots, knockups, any type of displacement, maybe even thing thrown into the mix. Mantis and Luna Snow with their displacement or crowd control abilities are extremely good. You might be thinking, Doug, why are strategists good at countering the hero? Well, you're mainly picking the strategists for the crowd control abilities if you run into the problem of a Black Panther. For the most part, in terms of strategy, the biggest way to counter a Black Panther is just running a triple strategist backline, whether it's a Adam, Jeff, and even Luna Snow, Adam, Luna, Ultron, Adam, or Luna, Ultron, Mantis are all extremely good at getting rid of that pesky presence. Then of course you have things like Namor with the Gamma team up with Hulk is an extremely good counter thing if you want to as well. For the most part, the best way to counter him is triple strategist. And in Season 4, Triple Strategist is currently meta and currently king, so playing that is going to be the best option. Now, how do you counter Black Widow? Well, Black Widow, in my opinion, is extremely strong and extremely good at pretty much anything. She's honestly low-key broken if you want to believe it or not. The character is good at anti-dive, and you might be thinking, how is a sniper good at anti-dive? Well, she has one shot, you use the kick, you grapple to it, knocks her up into the air, or knocks the diver up into the air, then you get an immediate follow-up headshot, and basically the diver is dealt with. Typically, if you're trying to get rid of a Black Widow, you want to use two divers, like a Venom plus a diving duelist to get rid of the character. Venom is probably one of the best ways at dealing with a Black Widow because Venom has a decently high health pool and ability to dive in and make him an excellent choice for disrupting Black Widow. But at the end of the day, you're pretty much trying to do a coordinated dive, whether it's a Venom paired up with any other diving duelist, a Hulk that takes position of the Venom, or even a Captain America taking position of the Venom as well, paired up with another duelist. That is your best way at countering the hero, unfortunately. Especially if the Black Widow knows how to play the game right, it's pretty hard to get rid of the character. Now before we go to Hawkeye, this video is sponsored and it's actually sponsored by me. I recently opened the merch store. There's only 2 merchandise available at this time, a coffee mug and some stickers. Look, it's not a lot, but I am working on getting all the images, everything ready. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and check it out. If not, no worries. Now if you don't want to check out the merchandise, at least hit that like button and at least subscribe. It greatly helps out the channel. But anyways, back to the video. Now when it comes to countering Hawkeye and Marvel rivals, you should use dive heroes like Psylocke. You want to use Iron Fist to quickly close the distance and eliminate him, as he is vulnerable if caught out of position. Alternatively, you want to use tanks with high health pools such as Hulk, Venom, Captain America that pressure him and force him to focus on survival. Because you always want to respect line of sight, you want to avoid challenging Hawkeye directly in the open duel. Instead, you want to use cover and play around corners to deny him clear lines of sight. You also want to close the distance. The primary goal is to get close to Hawkeye, where his effectiveness diminishes, making him easier to eliminate. Now moving on to Hela. In terms of strategy, you want to pressure and deny angles. Hela excels from high ground and off angles, so you want to pressure her to force her to reposition. You always want to be tracking her mobility. Hela's Squirrel ability is her primary mobile tool and escape. You want to wait for her to use it and dive her when she's vulnerable. Following that comes Hela's ultimate. It can end fights rather quickly, do a ton of damage if left unchecked, but it can also be shot down or burned by focus firing with the rest of your team, either by having a Doctor Strange fly up and shield it and the rest of your team focuses down. Once you hear that goddess go up into the air, you immediately want to turn your focus and shred it down. The faster you get rid of it, the less impact it's going to have. Now another thing to keep in mind is that team coordination is a pretty big factor with dealing with Hela or any of the other off-angle duelists. You want to communicate Hela's position and focus fire her with your team to eliminate her from the fight relatively early, so she doesn't rack up those picks. In terms of a direct hero counters, dive heroes can work, although it's very hard because Hela has a stun. She can easily 2-tap you. Like I've been saying with most of the snipers in this game, typically you want to do a duo dive situation where it's a Venom, maybe a Hulk, Captain America, paired up with another diving duelist to dive her and try to shred her down. Another thing, believe it or not, is a triple strategist backline. You might be thinking, how's that a counter when the Hela can go in, get a pick on the strategist, and they're down 1? Well, that is true, but the whole idea of the triple strategist is that Hela gets one headshot, but the rest of the healers sustain the rest of the team. So being triple strategist is decently good into a Hela. I think the meta right now at the beginning of Season 4 is very difficult for Hela to really get any value. That's why you're not seeing her played a ton. People are mainly playing Phoenix, Human Torch, Psylocke, Starlord. So you don't necessarily have to worry about Hela too much, but hopefully this helps a little bit. Now, countering Iron Fist can seem a little bit tricky, as sometimes he's very hard to kill, other times he's extremely easy to kill. The character isn't in the best state in Season 4, but anyways, here's how you deal with him. Now, of course, just like any other diving duelist, you want to focus on hard crowd control abilities such as stuns and freezes, high mobility to escape his attacks, burst damage to quickly eliminate him, and coordination with your team to prevent him from isolating and bursting you down. For heroes, you can think about characters like Mantis with her stun ability combined with a damage boosted headshot can stop an Iron Fist in his tracks. Winter Soldier possesses an insane amount of crowd control abilities. His hook, his knock-up, his E that knocks him down to the air and slows him, all very good. Loki can use his runes to disrupt Iron Fist's attempts to go in for free, and triple strategist still reigns supreme. Ultron, Atom, Luna, or any variation, the Iron Fist is going to get little to no value. Now, when it comes to countering diving duelists such as Iron Fist, for example, I always say Peni Parker is relatively good because she has a ton of crowd control abilities. Whether you want to believe it or not, especially with the Rocket team up, definitely pretty strong. Now, in terms of strategy, the biggest thing is keeping track of his parry or block. When an Iron Fist activates this block, it lasts for 1 second, absorbing damage and converting it to bonus HP and whatever the passive is from his right click, so he does more damage to enemies where he punches super fast essentially. After that 1 second period, it's on about a 15-second cooldown, so that is a big cooldown to keep into mind. The Iron Fist goes in, uses his parry, you don't shoot him when he's parrying, of course, then you dump all of his abilities in, then you have a 5-second window to track him down or mark him, to chase him, get rid of him as fast as possible. So that is something to keep in mind. 15 seconds is a relatively long time in this game. For countering Iron Man and Marvel Rivals, you want to utilize heroes with good range damage and mobility to target them in the air, such as Hela, Hawkeye, Punisher, Starlord, Phoenix. You can throw Scarlet Witch into the mix. I know a lot of people like picking Scarlet Witch to counter flyers, that's fine. Heroes that can also disrupt his flight, like Invisible Woman was pushing and holding the enemy. I don't know why I said it like that, but that's what it is. A lot of duelists can easily shut him down. Another good counter, in my opinion, is Doctor Strange. With both his shield and just flying up and harassing the Iron Man in general is a very good thing to do as well. For countering Magik, you want to use heroes with crowd control abilities like Penny's Mines, honestly. Namor's Squids are a very good example. Mantis Sleep, Luna Snow Freeze to set up traps to restrict her movement and surprise her. Heroes with high burst damage or mobility like aerial duelists or other melee duelists like Namor can be effective. I'm not sure why I said a melee duelist like Namor, but you get the idea. You want to use characters like Peni Parker, her mines and nets immobilize Magik, restricting her movement and making her relatively vulnerable. Namor and his octopus's summons can zone Magik and deal damage, and his ability to counter dive heroes makes him a top pick against her. Mantis, for the most part, her sleep ability can stop Magik in her tracks, creating a crucial window for your team to deal damage and to survive. Loki and his clones and healing buff can be set up to counter Magik, especially when she's aggressive. Now, 9 times out of 10, unless the Magik is extremely good, aerial duelists are very good at countering Magik. Iron Man, Storm, Human Torch, all extremely good. Again, 9 times out of 10, but there is that, 1 out of 10 chance that the Magik is extremely good and knows how to deal with the flyers, so that is always something to be wary of. Now, this might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but in my personal opinion, you kind of want to stick with your team. Look, I get it. Magik can go in, she can, deal damage to your entire team with her, circle ability. I don't know the terminology for Magik, I don't play the character personally, but yes, she can do AoE attacks. But the whole idea is that she is very good in isolated 1v1s, so why not try to minimize that risk of dying by going with your team? Now, in terms of sticking with your team when she's ulting, that's a different story. But when she's in her normal form, sticking with your team is going to be a little bit of a better option because you have a higher probability or higher chance of survival next to your teammates. Because you're not the one getting one-shotted, the person next to you is, so you can finish the deal. You kind of get the idea. It's like sacrificing your teammate for the greater good. Now with Moon Knight in Season 4, he got a second Crescent Blade or a second right click, meaning he does a little bit more damage. He's going to be getting his ult a little bit faster. Decent buffs. Doesn't make that character amazing? Not really, but decent enough. Now, typically characters with high mobility for dive attacks like Hulk, Captain America, Venom, Black Panther, Spiderman, if you want to throw those into the mix, or high sustained damage like Punisher, who can destroy his onks or overwhelm his support to effectively counter Moon Knight. You don't want to stay grouped. You want to spread out. You want to destroy the onks as fast as possible, so you don't have to deal with them anymore, and you're basically halving his damage. Another great examples or great heroes to choose from are flying heroes. Any flying hero counters Moon Knight in my personal opinion. Moon Knight is projectile, he's easier to dodge, those shots coming at you if you're moving around in the air. If you're getting hit by those shots, I think you need to work on your movement. I'm not trying to be mean, but that's just a general statement. Moon Knight should never be taking you out if you're flying in the air, so pretty much any of those characters are pretty good. I think Ultron is also a very good counter against Moon Knight in my personal opinion, just because he can heal his team, he can do poke damage from far, he can destroy his unks from pretty much anywhere on the map, things like that. If I mispronounce unks, my bad. Moving on, we come to Namor. Now, Namor can be extremely annoying to deal with, especially in Season 4. You might be thinking, there wasn't any changes to Namor. Yes, that is true, but the Gamma team-up is so annoying. Character is definitely very strong with that team-up. Outside of the team-up, he's not really played. Usually with the team-up, he's going to be played all the time. He is a flanking duelist. You might be thinking, how is he a flanking duelist? This thing, he's supposed to sit in your team's backline and put the squids for divers? Yes, that is true. That is if the enemy team is playing a dive composition. If they're not playing a dive composition, then you're always flanking as Namor. So you want to have somebody mark him, and by marking him, basically keeping track of where he's going, sticking on him, making sure he doesn't get any value outside of that. For the most part, you want to use range damage dealers like Punisher. Winter Soldier is also extremely good at getting rid of the squids and countering him in general. You always want to keep track of his cooldowns. The biggest cooldown to be aware of is the Blessing of the Deep ability. This is his water bubble that he saves himself from, or saves himself. He's CC immune, can't get attacked. Pretty easy to notice. On a relatively long cooldown, the second he gets rid of that, or the second that ability is gone, he's super easy pickings. Now, I always hate saying this, but it is a counter if you really want to choose it. Moon Knight is a decent counter into Namor because he can easily get rid of the squids. That's the whole reason why you pick Namor, because he gets rid of the squids so fast. But outside of that, he isn't going to be the best pick. You'll usually lose most 1v1s against Namor. It's just the fact you're using it. If you're really having trouble with shooting the squids, or nobody on your team is shooting the squids in general, you pick Moon Knight to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Psylocke, despite getting nerfed in Season 4, is still one of the strongest or stronger duelists in the game currently, especially with the Emma team-up. She's still relatively the same exact thing as she was in Season 3.5 and Season 3. Now, hear me out for a second. This might sound a little bit weird, but Psylocke's main weakness is her squishier nature. You might be wondering, how is that possible? She retrieves her right click, she gets a overshield back. Well, that is true. She's super vulnerable to direct confrontations and requires skilled positioning and timing to survive, if that makes sense. For the most part, you're not sitting in main, or you're not sitting with the rest of your team poking from a distance. You're typically going off on your own, going for side angles, going for flanks. So being able to know that, being able to position well, is a big thing most Psylocke players have to have. That being said, because she is going for these off angles, because she is going for these flanks, she's usually isolated. Now, in my opinion, you never want to take Psylocke on in a 1v1 situation. She's going to absolutely destroy you regardless of who you're playing, unless you're playing maybe Adam Warlock, but even then, you barely win, 5 out of the 10 fights or whatever. Now, in my opinion, the only good way to counter Psylocke with heroes is triple strategist backlines, therefore she can't get any picks on the backline, or if she does, you're not down healers, you're not losing a ton of healing output. So that's one of the best ways to deal with Psylocke, unfortunately. Emma Frost can be used as well, even though Emma Frost helps Psylocke. Emma Frost is a good example of a counter, in my personal opinion. Namor is also decent, even though she can easily destroy the squids, easily destroy Namor. The whole idea about that is throwing the Namor squids behind, knowing where the Psylocke is going to be coming from, marking her with the squids so she's not going to be unsurprised or surprising your team's backline because she is marked. But for the most part, you want to play against her weaknesses. You want to punish her misplays. For example, if Psylocke uses both her dashes or her invis, she's vulnerable to an attack, especially if she's on low HP. You want to utilize long-range heroes. Heroes with strong long-range capabilities can pressure her from a distance, forcing her out of position and making it difficult to approach. A good example of that, in my personal opinion, is Phoenix. Now, you also want to control space. Characters with crowd control abilities, like a Magneto, for instance, and Emma Frost thing, can deny her access to optimal engagement points or freeze her in place like a Luna Snow, a Mantis Freeze, though it is risky just walking up nearly as a strategist and trying to go for some type of crowd control ability. Now, you also want to punish disengages. If Psylocke uses her stealth to escape a fight, try to predict where she's going and get to health packs or choke points before she can recover. As you play the game more and more and get more familiar with the game, you're going to tend to know where Psylocke players are going to go. For instance, a character, if you force them out of position, typically go one route to a health pack. If you learn that one route by watching replays, understanding how the player moves, then you can start predicting where they're going to be ending up and get the jump on them. Those are all things to consider, but again, the biggest thing to probably keep in mind is to run triple strategist if that Psylocke is being an absolute menace. Now, when it comes to countering Punisher and Marvel rivals, you want to utilize long-range heroes like Hela or Hawkeye to maintain distance. You want to exploit his low mobility with a dive-focused character like Psylocke for the most part, or you want to use some sort of powerful crowd control abilities. Now, despite having an AR and doing decent damage from medium to long range, Punisher does struggle against longer ranged heroes like Hela, like Hawkeye, like Phoenix. Now, typically those characters, although they're not necessarily out of his kill potential area, they still have more damage at those ranges, so those are going to be the better picks into Punisher. Now, if played properly, a character like Psylocke can easily take out a Punisher in a matter of seconds. And probably one of the best overall counters in general has to be Magneto. By using Magneto's ultimate, you can counter Punisher's ultimate, the shields, everything. His whole kit is surrounded at countering Punisher, it feels like sometimes. So Punisher, definitely a must pick. In terms of dealing with his abilities, the second you see a Punisher turret, it's pretty much in your nature. The second you see it, your entire team shoots it, focuses it down. Now, the big thing is, when you destroy his turret, there's like a split second where Punisher kind of is standing still in the open. So if you can keep continuously dumping off the damage the second you break his turret, he's usually going to get eliminated as well. So identifying where that turret is, destroying it as fast as possible is a must and a top priority. Now, the second Punisher uses his ultimate, besides characters like Magneto, you can pick characters like Iron Man, although you wouldn't never play Iron Man and 2 Punisher unless you want to do it this way, or you're playing a character like Namor or Moon Knight. The second he pops his Judgment, or whatever his ultimate ability, I forget exactly what it's called off the top of my head, but basically you're using those 3 ultimates. The second Punisher uses his ultimate because he doesn't have an insane amount of mobility, although he did recently get some buffs with his mobility back in season 2.5, I think, but that's essentially how you deal with that. But for the most part, Punisher is one of those characters that is heavily enabled by his supports. So if you can work with your team to pressure Punisher and his supports, it will make him a lot easier to deal with. Now, when it comes to countering Scarlet Witch in Marvel Rivals Season 4, she did receive some changes with her ultimate and how it works. She also can get healed when she uses her Fade ability, which is a nice change. For the most part, you want to select heroes who can easily exploit her relatively low defenses and lack of mobility when she's not using her Ghost form or Fade form, whatever it's called. Strong counter picks include characters like Hawkeye or Punisher for their long range damage, Phoenix. Pretty much every single character in this game counters Scarlet Witch, unfortunately. She's not very good. When she's using her ultimate, all you have to do is use any form of crowd control ability to completely shut her down and waste the ultimate. It's kind of sad, but the character is just not that good. You want to use high burst characters. Starlord is also a good idea because then you can iframe her ultimate, which is nice if that is a big issue. For the most part, you don't run into a lot of Scarlet Witches, but like I said, high burst characters, Hawkeye, Hela, Phoenix, Starlord, like it's pretty good as well. Punisher can be decent as well. Emma Frost, all characters can shut her down relatively easy, unfortunately. Peni Parker is also a pretty good idea. You can continuously right click or use the web snare or stun Don't know the exact terminology, but this continuously stun the Scarlet Witch so she can't move around freely. She can't ult at the time. Those are some good changes or good picks to do. Now in Marvel Rivals, heroes that can halt or control Spider-Man's high mobility and dive-based attacks are the best counters. Characters like Scarlet Witch with her auto-aim attacks can be decent counters to Spider-Man. Luna Snow's freeze when he's ulting, Mantis is asleep when he's ulting as well to cancel his ult. Thing just being existing is very annoying as a Spider-Man player. Loki both have his invisibility, his clones, and his regeneration domain, so it can be pretty tricky to figure out which Loki is the real one. Peni Parker with her mines and web snare definitely hard to deal with. Namor is always going to be a very good pick at dealing with Spider-Man. The more turrets basically just track where the Spider-Man is at all times, so you can easily mark the Spider-Man and take him out. Starlord, in my opinion, is also a pretty good counter at dealing with Spider-Man. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, triple strategist is always going to reign supreme, probably the best idea to counter him. Now, moving on to Squirrel Girl, in Marvel Rivals, players should utilize flying or mobile characters to evade her projectiles, burst damage characters to quickly eliminate her, and characters with high crowd control abilities to interrupt her abilities and ultimates. Again, like I said, you really want to utilize flyers. Characters like Iron Man, Storm, Human Torch are all excellent counters because their flight makes them difficult for Squirrel Girl to hit with her nuts and other projectiles. If you're getting hit by her projectiles as a flyer, you definitely should work on your movement. You definitely want to employ burst damage. Squirrel Girl is a relatively squishier character, so heroes like Psylocke, characters like Starlord who can deliver high burst damage can eliminate her quickly before she can react or use her abilities effectively. And always destroy her ultimate as best as possible. Her ultimate has a health bar. It's not a super big health bar, so if you focus it down with your team, it'll take 1 second to destroy, and that's her ultimate gone. You don't have to worry about random damage hitting you, so definitely destroy that. You always want to avoid tight spaces, tight corridors, to avoid Squirrel Girl's big burst damage, big AoE damage, and that's pretty much how you deal with this character. Now, in terms of Starlord, he can be relatively difficult to counter in my personal opinion. He's a pretty good hero, very mobile, has a ton of burst damage, has iframes, annoying to deal with. You want to use characters like Magneto, Doctor Strange to block his ultimate, and you might be wondering, how does Doctor Strange block his ultimate? Well, Doctor Strange will fly up into the air and shield him, kind of like Hela's ult, but just chasing him around. Although it is on the riskier side, and I wouldn't lean to this, it is an option to do. Loki is a decent counter because his healing lanterns or his regeneration domain hard counter Star-Lord's ultimate, so baiting them out first is crucial for a Star-Lord. So picking Loki, definitely a good option. My opinion, besides that, Hela is a good counter. Hawkeye is a decent counter as well if you have relatively good aim or superior aim. Black Widow, pretty good as well, believe it or not, especially with a kick and his CC abilities. Phoenix, very good, probably a must pick. Psylocke, as well, all good picks. In terms of strategy, you want to use covers and flanks since Starlord needs to get close to deal significant amount of damage. Using cover and taking off-angle flanks from behind can help you avoid his poke damage and close the distance. You want to bait abilities out. Luring out Starlord's right click or the flip that reloads his primary fire and gives him an iframe. He has 2 of them, so keeping track of those is a good option. The second he's out of that movement, he's pretty much a sitting duck. Now, following that, you do want to exploit his vulnerabilities. Starlord has a relatively low health pool of only 250, making him vulnerable to focus damage, especially when he's focused on a single target during his ultimate. Now, to counter Storm and Marvel Rivals, you want to use support ultimates from heroes like Mantis or Invisible Woman, Luna Snow to nullify her ultimate, or focus fire with high damage heroes like Iron Man to burst her down during her ultimate. Phoenix is also a very good pick because when Storm is ulting, she gets a overshield. Phoenix negates or destroys that overshield, so when you ult the ulting Storm, she goes down to about 70 HP, somewhere in that realm. Whatever the exact number is, it is a very low number, so Phoenix ult, and then you just shoot her a couple times, and that's one ultimate gone. Now, for whatever reason, if the enemy team is using Magneto, you can do the same thing, where you use the Phoenix ult, and then you just shred them down again after. You could also use Psylocke's ultimate if the Storm is by herself, because it actually is isolation onto the Storm, so that's nothing to worry about. Iron Man ult, Starlord ult, also ways to counter Magneto. For the most part, hit scan and mobility heroes are king at dealing with Storm. Punisher, Winter Soldier, Hela, Phoenix, Starlord, all exceptionally good characters, even Psylocke for the most part because Storm has a relatively big hitbox. In terms of disruptors, Hulk's abilities like XL can disrupt Storm's positioning, making her extremely vulnerable. So definitely think about those characters and those strategies when you're dealing with a Storm. Now, when it comes to Bucky or Winter Soldier, he can be pretty annoying to deal with all of his abilities, especially with the new effects to his shift ability, which is his, I think it's Super Fist, or Uppercut, whatever it is. The one that knocks you up, it now grounds you for a second, which is kind of crazy. So how do we counter him? Typically, he is decent to medium to close range, although he can do okay at long range. Hit scan heroes that maintain that distance and can do consistent fire. Hela, Phoenix, Hawkeye, if you want to throw that into the mix. Punisher is okay as well, but I wouldn't recommend that. Mainly Hela, Phoenix are your better options. A Psylocke with Emma's team up is extremely good at countering Bucky as well, even though you might not think that, but it is a good way to counter him. Emma Frost is also an exceptionally good counter, especially in diamond form with the damage resistance to really disbully the Bucky as well. In terms of counters, the second Winter Soldier is going for his ultimate, you just want to focus the Winter Soldier. Even though your life is on the line, you're about to give him a reset, if your entire team can just get rid of him, you can stop those resets from continuing. Every single time the Winter Soldier is going for a hook, you have to call it for your team, so communication is a big thing. You hear the hook charging up, you tell your team, Winter Soldier or Bucky is going for a hook, so hopefully your shield tanks will shield and the Winter Soldier gets no value. That's a big part of playing against a Winter Soldier, is knowing if he's going to be going for a hook or not. If you can minimize that, you minimize the risk of your team dying or your tanks getting picked. So those are all big things. To counter Wolverine and Marvel Rivals, you want to use characters with decently high mobility and range attacks to maintain distance. When you think about characters, in my personal opinion, like a Starlord, even though it's not a super long range, Starlord can be super annoying. Hela, Phoenix, Hawkeye, if you want to throw that into the mix, Winter Soldier, Punisher are all decent counters as well. Consistent damage, consistent pressure, that forces the Wolverine to go into some uncomfortable spots, just farting him out, trying to burn his passive as quickly as possible. On the note of passive, the second the Wolverine passive gets popped, the second it goes on cooldown, that is a big cooldown. You really have to communicate to that team. You hear a lot of pro players, high elo players, say in their games that Wolverine has no passive. That is a big indicator that if the Wolverine goes in and you grab him, he's pretty much going to get eliminated, so that is something to keep track of all the time. Invisible Woman is a very good counter as well. If Wolverine goes for a grab on Vanguard, for instance, Invisible Woman can use the pull of her E ability on mouse and keyboard to pull the Wolverine, and it will stop the grab onto your Vanguard. It will also pull the Wolverine towards your team, displacing him and making it an easy pick on your end. I don't know why I said it like that, but you get the idea. Following that, in terms of Vanguards that kind of counter Wolverine, I mean, for the most part, Wolverine's pretty easy to deal with. I don't think he's as good as people really think. He's kind of like a Doomfist from Overwatch. I think some people compare them that way. That as long as you know where the Wolverine is coming from, you can pretty much survive all the time. For instance, if you know Wolverine is coming from the right side, you want to position yourself on the left side closer to a wall so you can't really do anything with the grab. But if the Wolverine has the jump pack, that's a whole different story. But in terms of Vanguards, you want to think about Magneto. Yes, Magneto can't really do anything, but he has the bubble to save himself or the other person getting grabbed, which is a big advantage to that. Thing is a good counter because he can't get grabbed, although he does get knocked down and can get easily shredded. That is something to keep in mind. Emma Frost, for the most part, is a decent counter because she can swap to diamond form or go diamond form before he goes for the grab, but you just have to be wary of the second the diamond form runs out, he can just re-grab you and displace you again. So it is a potential, you just have to miss time and you have to use your abilities appropriately so you don't get grabbed as Emma Frost. Now, in terms of countering Mr. Fantastic Marvel Rivals, the big thing to be aware of is cooldown management, like I say time and time again. You have to be aware of when he uses his square form. A lot of my team calls it pancake, Pop-Tart, whatever you want to call it. The second that cooldown is gone, he's pretty easy to pick off. Crowd control abilities are crucial for interrupting his combos and just being a complete menace to him. Ludus Snow Freeze, Mantis Asleep. Burst damage is effective when he's inflated, especially a character like Starlord and Wolverine are all choices. Phoenix, very good as well, unfortunately. If Mr. Fantastic is going for his ultimate, you can use any Strategist ultimate to counter as well. That being said, that goes for a lot of the duelists in this game, especially for Mr. Fantastic. So those are the things you should be looking out for. Emma Frost is a good counter to Mr. Fantastic as well, because she can just grab him and kick him around, pretty much. Moving on to Human Torch. He is probably one of, if not the strongest duelist in the entire game, on par with Phoenix in my personal opinion. He is probably the hardest character to deal with. Even with hit scan heroes in the game, he is still incredibly hard to hit, especially if the Human Torch knows how to use Human Torch the right way, and that is using his movement to the maximum potential, being impossible to hit. So you could say hit scan heroes do counter Human Torch, but sometimes it doesn't really feel like that because the character is insanely hard to hit. For instance, Scarlet Witch and Namor can be effective anti-air options because they're not necessarily hit scan, but Namor's Gamma team-up Squid can really shred down a flying torch, especially with the changes back in Season 3 of Namor's left click and right click. They have a faster projectile time. Those are pretty solid counters. Scarlet Witch, I guess, with the auto tracking, but I really wouldn't play Scarlet Witch. Honestly, at the end of the day, if you're playing ranked, you really just need to ban the character if you have the ban options available. This character always runs the lobby if he's left unbanned, and I'm pretty sure the character has one of the highest ban rates in the game currently, so might as well stick to that until they actually decide to nerf him accordingly. Again, the character is completely strong, super strong. If you manage to get it, definitely recommend playing it. Outside of that, hit scan heroes, although it's going to be relatively hard. Moving on, we come to Phoenix, probably one of, if not the strongest duelist in the entire game currently. Most of the ways to counter her is just using a ton of crowd control and constantly pressuring her, because her kit is just unreal. The amount of survivability, the amount of damage, so it can be really hard. Besides just banning her, that's the easiest option. I think one of the biggest things to do about countering this character, even though it does an insane amount of damage, if you can jump on her as a Captain America, is probably going to be the best option in my opinion. The biggest way to counter her is waiting for her to use her ultimate. For the most part, her ultimate does an insane amount of damage, especially comboed up with a Magneto ult or a Lunar Snow damage boost. Those are the biggest combos you're going to be seeing. But you really just want to shoot her ultimate just like a Hela ultimate. It can be hard to hit, yes I know. It has a smaller hitbox in comparison to that of Hela's, but she only has 400 HP in that ultimate, or the Phoenix ultimate only has 400 HP. So if you can destroy that, you heavily impact how useful the character is. If you're constantly destroying it, she's getting little or to no value in her ultimate. Very good. So every single time you hear that ultimate, try to destroy it as fast as possible. Trust me, it really does make a difference, even though it might be kind of troll, or you might not think it's the best play to look up when the enemy is running at you. Destroying it before, fighting the enemy is always going to be the best option. The other way to deal with her is kind of overwhelming her like a Hela. Pretty much just throwing the book at her. Playing a Captain America with a diving duelist and just jumping on her is another good option. Although it depends how good the Phoenix is, unfortunately. The character is just super overtuned and has so much to her kit that it's very hard to do anything unless you ban the character. I hate saying that, but that's just the reality of it. Now, when it comes to countering Blade in Marvel Rivals, look, Blade isn't the best character in the game, so you want to focus on characters with the long-range attacks or projectile attacks, like a Hela, like a Hawkeye, like Phoenix, Winter Soldier, Punisher, or use heroes with crowd control abilities like a Peni Parker with her Spidermans and her web shot, her right click, Squirrel Girl with stuns to disrupt his aggressive pushes. Also, team composition is relatively important. You want to pick tanks to lock up down, or damage dealers to constantly apply pressure. So you want to think of the Thing, you want to think of Emma Frost to really not allow him to run around. For the most part, the character is all about isolating him. If you can isolate him from the rest of his team, like playing a group, it's always going to be a really good option. The character can't 1v6, so that is something to keep in mind. And when you think he has his ultimate, definitely spreading out is going to be the best option to work with. But that's essentially how you can counter every single DPS or duelist currently in Marvel Rivals Season 4. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you made it this far into this relatively long video, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe. But let's dive straight into the strategist section. So kicking things off with probably one of my favorite strategists in the game besides Ultron, Adam Warlock. More like a duelist rather than a strategist, you want to exploit his soul bond ability by focusing down a single target to break the link. That's usually Adam Warlock. When they soul bond, you want to just shoot at Adam Warlock. The faster you get rid of them, you don't have to worry about the soul bond anymore. And you also want to utilize consistent damage heroes over burst damage, and you want to play out of his line of sight to negate his DPS or his duelist-like potential. In terms of his ultimate, Soul Resurrection, his ultimate has a relatively long cast time in my opinion, making him relatively vulnerable, so if you can mark him and chase him down before he goes for the res and he starts resing, you can take him out, then he won't get the res off and he wasted his ultimate. You can pressure him and his team during the cast or wait for the effect to expire, as it only lasts for 9 seconds. This is where hiding comes into play. You go for the res as Adam Warlock. Your team should just pull back, walk out of that resurrection area, so that there's little to no value that they get out of it. It's a wasted ability. Another big thing to keep in mind is to punish his vulnerabilities. Adam Warlock's direct healing is limited, and he is less effective when his team is not essentially grouped together. You want to use these opportunities to out-sustain his team by living longer than them and constantly assessing the flow of the fight. Following that, you also want to explain another weakness of his, and that's mobility. Adam Warlock, relatively slow, has no movement abilities besides holding W, so those are some things to keep in mind. So high mobility characters are great options at dealing with him. Moving on to our next strategist, we have Cloak and Dagger. Burst damage is usually the way at dealing with strategists in the enemy's backline. Some one-shot abilities also help as well. You want to keep track of when Cloak uses his right click or the fade away, basically making him vulnerable and untargetable, so those are big things to watch out for. For the most part, dealing with enemy strategists is going to be diving the enemy. Characters like Hawkeye can easily take out a Cloak and Dagger when they're ulting, or a Black Widow with the Mantis damage boost can also one-shot her mid-ultimate. Another big thing that I like to do and my team likes to do is playing Doctor Strange, and at the end of the Cloak and Dagger ult, or when the Cloak and Dagger ult is going into the 4th dash, as Doctor Strange, you pop your ultimate and you solo ult the ulting Cloak and Dagger. It's definitely a good trade in my personal opinion. Getting rid of that strategist ultimate as quickly as possible is the best option. Now, Jeff received some insane changes in Season 4, and you're seeing him played more and more. He's honestly insanely strong this season, believe it or not, whether you want to admit it or not as well. But the whole idea of dealing with Jeff is to use heroes with high burst damage and mobility, and you really need to spread out when he's using his ultimate. You want to use abilities that provide a iframe or immunity to survive his ultimate. Characters like Punisher, who can use his turret form, Starlord right click, which is an iframe, but some big counters that do extremely well of marking and chasing down Jeff players are Iron Fist, Scarlet Witch. You could throw Squirrel Girl into the mix for damage, or characters with movement abilities like a Psylocke to try to burst it down as fast as possible. Honestly, I've always thought that Hawkeye is a decent choice whether you're going for a charged headshot, although it won't one-shot him, it'll get him extremely low, or using the explosive arrows while he's underground. Ultron, in my opinion, is also a very good counter. Ultron pretty much has his ultimate up all the time, if you want to believe it or not. While the Jeff is going for his ultimate or his ultimate is ending, you ult as Ultron to quickly eliminate the Jeff with your teammates inside of his belly. So definitely one of the better counters in my opinion, so definitely keep those factors and things in mind. Moving on to Loki. To counter Loki in Marvel Rivals, the biggest thing is to destroy his clones in his regeneration domain, which is his lamps. The faster you get rid of his clones, the less amount of healing and damage he's going to be doing. The faster you get rid of his regeneration domains, the less impact they're going to have. After the nerfs in Season 4, for the most part, the most amount of impact this character is going to be getting now is really just from his regeneration domain or his lamps. So if you can get rid of those as fast as possible, his impact, everything like I previously stated, definitely goes down. For the most part, characters like Moon Knight are great counters to bounce off of the clones, although it is not the best hero, definitely a solid counter, especially against Namor and Loki, to get rid of these objects or these characters or clones, whatever. Following that, Winter Soldier is a great option as well. You can use his ultimate ability to bounce off of Loki's clones to continuing his resets. It's very annoying, definitely a solid thing to do. Moving on, we come to our next healer or strategist, Luna Snow. Despite getting some nerfs in Season 4, she's still probably the strongest strategist in the entire game besides the other 3. For the most part, in terms of countering Luna Snow, it's usually a coordinated dive with a Venom with a Duelist to get rid of her quickly. Also, Magneto ult, Iron Man ult, Hawkeye ult, all very good at getting rid of her. A Phoenix ult plus Magneto combo, good counter as well. These are all big things to be looking out for, and for the most part, that's how you counter her. There isn't a lot of direct hero counters, it's mainly just dives and using your ultimate combos to get rid of her ultimate. That's really about it. Moving on to Rocket, you want to use dive tanks like Venom or Captain America to close the distance, or heroes with high mobility to flank him like an Iron Fist, Psylocke or Spiderman, or controllers who can really just disable him. Alternatively, characters with strong range attacks also do pretty well, like a Punisher, a Hela, Phoenix are all relatively good. Phoenix is probably the best option because her ultimate negates all of Rocket's utility and his ultimate, so a very solid pick. For the most part, in terms of countering this character, it's all about breaking utility. When he places his ultimate, you want to destroy his ultimate as fast as possible. If you manage to find his BRB or respawn beacon, destroy it as fast as possible as well. The less of the utility on the map, the less of a problem and just what he gives to the team. Now, when it comes to dealing with Invisible Woman, she doesn't have direct self-sustain. She can't really, self-sustain herself. Yes, she can go invisible and passively heal up. Yes, she can throw a shield on a strategist and you can stand behind it. But in terms of if she's isolated or caught out, she can't really self-sustain. So diving on her when she's ISO is a very good option to do. For the most part, there's a lot of counters in the game when she's inside of her ultimate, because her ultimate isn't the best, even though it did get some buffs, 180 health per second now, and it does slow enemies inside of the ultimate. Still not the best. Another big thing to be looking out for is to listen for footsteps. Even when invisible, her footsteps can be heard, providing a small audio cue to her location. Jeff, in my opinion, is also a great counter to Invisible Woman. So if Invisible Woman pops her ultimate, the Jeff can ult and grab everybody out of the Invisible Woman ult. I think it's a very solid counter, something that should be used if you're playing against an Invisible Woman. Moving on to Mantis. Her general strategies for the most part is focus fire. Mantis has relatively weak healing in her kit, so focusing your damage on her can prevent her from buffing and healing her teammates. You really want to exploit her ultimate. Her ultimate is definitely good. It's a momentum based ultimate, but it's not that good in my opinion. You can use things like Punisher's ultimate, you can use things like Doctor Strange's ultimate to completely counter her ultimate. Because she's not crowd control immune, the Doctor Strange ultimate onto her is a very good option. And then just like I've always been saying, when it comes to strategies, diving in a duo setup is always one of the best options because she can only sleep one enemy, so doing that is always going to be the better option. But right now, triple strategist is king, so she's going to be with two other strategists, so it could be pretty difficult. So you always want to look for big burst damages and big combos. Now moving on to Ultron, more again like a duelist than a strategist. Ultron can be pretty annoying to deal with. For the most part, you want to be looking at ranged duelists, hit scan duelists, Hela, Black Widow, Hawkeye if you want to, Punisher, Starlord, Phoenix are all extremely good options. I would say Starlord is probably one of the better options in my personal opinion because Starlord ultimate completely counters Ultron's ultimate as well, and Ultron has a relatively big hitbox, so Starlord can easily shred down an Ultron. For the most part, you want to pressure Ultron as best as possible. You don't want to let him control the fight. Apply constant and consistent pressure with high damage heroes to keep him on the defensive. Make sure he uses his cooldowns. His shift ability is a massive cooldown, and he only has accelerated flight for 6 seconds now, so that is something to keep in mind as well. Another thing is to exploit his vulnerability. Ultron is often forced into the open when pushing forward, making him an easier target for ranged heroes. This is all certainly true and big things to keep in mind. Now with that being said then, that's how to counter pretty much every single hero in Marvel Rivals. Let me know what your favorite counter is in the comments down below. Not all the counters were mentioned, but basically the biggest and most majority ones are included in this video. But anyways, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form. If it has, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe, it really helps out the channel. I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.